Hello there, and welcome back to Little Bear Games. I'm Josh.
I'm Andy.
And today we're going to be starting a new mini-series for you all, one we're quite excited to do, and realistically we probably should do. I feel it's our duty as gamers to kind of do this and set a good example for people.
I agree with you.
So this series is going to be our Shelf of Shame reviews. So for those of you who aren't aware of what a Shelf of Shame is, and I'm sure plenty of you have them already, but good for you if you don't, it's essentially the shelf of board games you have in your collection that have sat there for a very long time and you've never actually got around to playing. And I think I speak for us both, Andy, when I say we're quite guilty of having fairly well-developed Shelves of Shame.
I have a large Shelf of Shame. It's like my Steam collection. I end up buying games and never playing them, which is absolutely terrible. But
yeah, it is quite bad and it is quite telling. I do the exact same thing on my Switch as well. I've got such a back catalogue of games that I've bought on sale and have never actually played.
Yeah.
So I suppose we thought this would be quite an interesting series to do, but at the same time, I suppose it's quite a selfish one, really, because we're kind of helping ourselves by playing through these games.
The intentions are certainly selfish, aren't they? You know, it was how can we play these board games and take advantage of it from a podcast perspective? So we thought this would be exciting to do.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things is to point out early from this, at the end of our discussion over the game, what we thought about it, what it's like, etc. We're going to give a little rating at the end of whether we think the game is going to remain on our Shelf of Shame or whether it's going to see a bit more action on the tabletop.
Yeah.
So we're starting today with the first game from my Shelf of Shame, which is Senjutsu, Battle for Japan. Now, this is on the box, it says 2 to 4 player sort of skirmish samurai dueling game with a lot of deck construction mechanics. But actually, it's got a very nice little solo option in it. Quite obviously, due to the nature of this video, I've not actually played that yet. But it comes with a really cool comic book that sets up these different scenarios and you can play through them. So, little spoiler alert, I do think I'll be cracking that at some point and giving it a go on my own, regardless of whether I end up playing it.
You do like a solo?
Yeah, I do. Or regardless of if I end up playing it with other people or not in future. So, Andy, do you want to just explain a little bit about how the game played and your thoughts on it?
Yeah, sure. So as you've said, the game's set in Japan and it's 2 samurai dueling each other, and you have a deck of cards that you're managing and playing face down, turning up, and there's an initiative number. So when you're turning your cards the right way up, depending on whose initiative is higher, they get to move first. It's an interesting game that reminded me a lot of Unmatched, which is also on my Shelf of Shame, which is where you know duel against other people, different teams, etc. I thought the game was very pretty to look at. There was some confusion on some of the rules around blocking that we need to explore a little bit better and would probably make a difference to how the game resulted for you and I, because we changed it up a little bit when we were playing because we were unsure of one of the rules. I was frustrated at the game because I ended up losing by not being attacked. What I mean by that is that Josh had managed to hit me once with quite a brutal hit, and I ended up having bleed, which meant I discarded my cards and went through my deck. And once you get through your deck, if you can't draw a card anymore, you're taking wounds. So it's important to note that this game plays for about 15 minutes?
Yeah,
so
it's quite quick.
It's quite a quick game. So it's not a long game at all. I went through my deck very quickly because Josh had given me bleed. And the idea is that your character has a number of wounds that it can take. Ours happened to be 5 each. I'd managed to do about 3 wounds to you and thought I was on a winning path.
Yeah.
And then you did 1 wound to me and a bleed. And it just meant that I burnt through my cards fairly quickly.
Yeah, it was interesting because I definitely picked up on that frustration from you as we were getting towards the tail end of the game.
What gave it away?
I think you said that's a rubbish way to lose the game or something. But I think, it's an interesting one. It's very tight. It's very aggressive. And something I noticed is, I suppose, just kind of feeding into what you were saying about frustration.
Yeah.
I felt the flip side of your frustration in that I kind of felt that I won that without deserving to win it, which for me, isn't a very nice feeling because, you know, I'm ultra competitive in board games, and I was getting annoyed at the start of the game because I was like, I'm getting beaten down here and there's no way I'm coming back from this.
Yes.
Because the character Andy played, the Ronin, it's probably important to mention there's 4 different characters in that base box set I've got, with a few expansions that are out now that I don't own that introduce more characters. And it's got the warrior, the Ronin, the master and the student in it, and they all play very differently and they come with different starter decks. However, once you get used to the game, you can build your own deck to kind of fit your play style around these characters and their abilities. However, what I found was I was just getting beaten down relentlessly by your guy, the Ronin. And the Ronin seemed, or at the very least his starter deck seemed to be built around stun. And stun's a mechanic in the game where it essentially clogs your deck. To draw a really basic comparison that we've made a few times on the podcast so far, it's like the Witch in Dominion.
Yeah.
You know, you have to take stun into your hand and you can play it on your turn, but it does nothing. So it's kind of wasting your go. Alternatively, it sits in your hand and takes up space. And if you fill your hand up with stun cards, you lose the game. So at one point, and you wouldn't have known this, I had 3 stun cards in my hand.
Okay.
And only 2 kind of cards I could do anything with.
Oh, that makes me feel way worse that you beat me.
But that so that's my point, right? Is I had 3 wounds on me, so I only had 2 hits left to go until I lost. And then my hand was filling up with these stun cards. And then I managed to do that bleed attack on you. And then what seemed to happen, I think, is that, I mean, I started playing the stun cards out of my hand because you'd moved backwards from me.
Yes.
So I was like, right, well, Andy's deck looks like it's getting a little thin, so I'm just going to keep my distance and not move towards him.
Yeah.
I couldn't really move back because I didn't have anything to move back with.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm definitely not going to close that distance at all. And and that was kind of the game, wasn't it? You closed in and hit me once, and I managed to turn you around, and that was it.
Yes.
And it didn't feel to me like a very well-earned victory. And I get thematically, it probably works. Like the big kind of brutal samurai guy gets cut horribly by the smaller guy and bleeds out. And
exactly.
That works. But it just wasn't very satisfying for me. And I guess for you, it must have been really frustrating on the other end of it.
It was frustrating, but hearing you speak then and having a bit of time to think about it, as we've only really just played the game, it was the first time we played the game. So the rules we were learning, we learnt just before we played. And as I said previously, we were uncertain on some rule clarification. And I have to take some... So it wasn't just the bleed that was the problem. As part of these cards, you have an option if you choose to. You can play a card that allow you to draw 2 or 3 cards. And I think I did that once or twice.
You did it a couple of times, yeah.
So the burning through my deck was also my own fault. And I should have... clarified the rule on what happens when you basically mill your deck. At first we thought that the game just ended, but it turns that you take a wound card. So that's also my own doing in terms of strategy and not fully anticipating what the end game was.
I suppose on that note, if you'd had a couple of cards in hand to move forward and hit, because I was still on 4 wounds.
You ended up on 4 wounds at the end
so
when you finished me off.
If you'd managed to just turn around and hit me once, you still would have won the game.
Yes.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I feel like you and I are on a similar level with it, actually, speaking to you now. We only played the game earlier this afternoon, but this is our first time kind of properly speaking about it. But we feel kind of similar. Like, I feel there's something there, and I feel it could be something that I do enjoy and could kind of get into. But at the moment, I feel a little bit frustrated, a little confused.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure if I liked it or not yet.
I think I feel the same way, though I'm definitely going to give the game a chance, mainly because I think the mechanic's there for me. I like the mechanic of the game. It's a very beautiful game. Should say it's a very small hex-based game that you move your figurine round, and depending on the card you play, you move in certain directions and turn your character. They're little, I think, fairly high quality actually, miniatures that you put on the small board that you have.
Yeah, the minis are lovely.
Yeah, the minis are very cool, and they can block certain hexes. So I think the game's very, very beautiful, and we've talked about prettiness of games before, so that attracts me to it. Miniatures are high quality, and the game mechanics very good. I think it's just learning and understanding the rules fully and coming up with a better strategy, and not milling myself and letting you make me bleed, basically.
Well, I think, I think I agree with you basically on everything you've said there. I think the game's beautiful. There's something compelling about it. I kind of feel as though we were mainly frustrated by the fact that the end of the game was a little unusual in that sense.
Yeah.
But also the fact that we did have a couple of moments where we did have to sit and kind of read over rules and stuff like that. And we were a little bit unclear and we were changing stuff halfway through. And I feel I almost get the sense the game's not supposed to be played that way at all. I feel that it's supposed to be very fast, very aggressive. And it almost seems like the kind of thing that you could have a couple of rounds of and almost do like the best 2 out of 3 on.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you're playing that sort of pace, then losing from bleed in the way we did is just kind of, well, in the way you did, no offense, it's like a drop in the ocean.
Yes.
Because then next turn you can come back, draw a better hand, play a bit differently and smash me with a lower stun or whatever. Yes. I just feel it was the fact that we were getting a bit bogged down in the rules. And I will add, I think that is one of my issues with it, is that rule book. It's not the best. No. I don't think it was particularly well laid out and wasn't that clear at points. And there was a few things that you could interpret in multiple ways. And then what really surprised me as well is there didn't seem to be much support online via Board Game Geek or Reddit or anything like that, where normally if you've got quite a niche question about a game, you can usually find it pretty easily, can't you?
Yeah. So just to clarify, it was, you have these figurines, you have a little temple or some rocks that block the hexes, and Josh and I were debating whether when I attack, whether these figurines block that attack. And there was something in the book about if it was a projectile, then the rock or the temple would block it. But if it was a close quarters attack, so swinging with my sword, would that block the rest of the hexes? So we were having a bit of a debate about that, and that's what we looked at online,
like the line, wasn't it?
Yes.
So if you had like 3 in a row, and you were stood behind a rock or a shrine or what have you, does the attack still hit those other hexes and just miss the one with the shrine on it?
Yes.
Which it got a bit boggy and a bit confusing there, because you can't enter a hex with a rock or a shrine on it. But at the same time, in the rulebook, it clarifies that the terrain blocks the hexagon it's on, not any adjacent ones.
Yes.
But then we were getting into the whole, well, the card's like devastating sweep.
Yes.
And then in real life, if you swang a spear or a sword at someone and there's a big rock in between you, it's not going through the rock.
100%. And maybe we were overthinking it. I don't think it changed the outcome of the game. I think we had played it either way, so if we played the block attack, you and I would have taken 1 wound less, I think, in the game that we played. I think I still would have lost. So that isn't a problem. But that just needed some clarity. And you're right, that was a bit of a frustration that put some doubt on the game. But I think once we clarify that rule, the game's going to be solid.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was a couple of other things we were still a little bit uncertain on as well. But I feel like there's a lot of depth there that's still to be explored.
Yes.
I mean, I had a look just a minute ago when I was packing it away at the execution moves. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. No.
So that's insane.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
So it's they're really crazy attacks that cost a load of focus.
Okay.
Throughout the game, you can collect focus tokens through various means, and you can use them to kind of pay for upgrades on your attacks and make them more devastating. And one of these is each character, I think, has one in their deck called their execution move.
Okay.
And so it's just a crazy kind of bird's eye view of the board, and the attacks will be dotted around everywhere, seemingly randomly, so in really hard positions to pull off. But one of them has a skull on it, and that's your execution move. So if that hits the other player, they lose. So it doesn't matter. So if through some sort of weird means you were able to get low focus in your first couple of turns, you could end the game without even fighting your opponent. Like, you can just one-shot them.
Oh, I'm glad you didn't do that to me, because I might have flipped the table. And it's a heavy table, so that would have been difficult. But hey.
But no, it's so I think there's a lot there, a lot more to explore. There was a poison stuff, there was traps we didn't use.
Okay.
The other characters,
Yes.
constructing your own deck and having a bit more control over how it plays. And actually, in fact, I think that's just one other thing that bothered me very slightly with the game. And I think in part, I don't want to speak on your behalf here, but I wonder if that possibly added to the frustration as well. Is like in a lot of those sort of games, you've normally got an option to discard something from your hand or play a card, or all the cards have kind of a basic value on them.
Yeah.
That you can discard this card or put it down or whatever to move one hex. Whereas this didn't seem to have that. So there was a few occasions where I couldn't move at all and I couldn't attack. And I found that a bit weird. And it didn't bother me so much after you'd stunned me a few times, because I thought, okay, I'll just take the chance to get rid of some of these stun cards.
Yeah.
It did seem like occasionally you were just forced into playing random blocks or random attacks for the sake of it.
I didn't pick up on that. You mentioned it through the game, and it just wasn't something that cropped up in my mind. But I think maybe that's because my hand that I was drawing each turn, I always had the ability to do something.
Yeah.
So I was a bit until the very last time where I needed focus to play all the cards that I had in my hand, and I didn't have any focus.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I mean, though, is that you weren't able to do anything, and that's it.
Yes.
You know, like most of those sort of games like that give you the opportunity to play something, so you can just kind of move one, or block, or you know, do something.
If you don't use a card this turn, then just discard a card, and
you can move one hex,
or
rotate,
or
maybe.
rotate. Maybe a rotate. Yeah, because your rotation in where you're facing will make a difference to your attack, right?
Yeah.
So if you're facing, let's just say north, I don't, if everyone can imagine north, but Josh is stood to my east, and my attack swings to sort of the north and the west, then I'm not going to hit Josh. So your orientation is quite important. So yeah, you're right. Maybe discarding a card just so you can set yourself up for your next card that you're going to play. Maybe we can house rule it. Maybe it's something that we throw in there at some point just to experiment with.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for house ruling, because I definitely feel we've missed stuff. I feel like we've very much scratched the surface of something that's quite deep. And I feel that's why, in a way, Senjutsu, we kind of feel the way we do about it, is because it's a bit of an anomaly for us.
Yes.
In the sense of something like Unmatched, where you'll have Sherlock Holmes fighting Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or you'll have Jurassic Park 1 or Spider-Man versus, Captain America or whatever. It's very much like that, isn't it? It's very similar. Deck of cards, miniatures on the board, moving around. But it's very simple, very quick.
Yeah.
Whereas this plays, or is supposed to play, very quickly. And actually, if you have a look on Board Game Geek, it's only a 3 out of 5 in terms of weight.
Oh, okay.
And I don't give that much credence anyway, because I think it's too subjective. But I don't think it's the heaviest thing in the world, but I think it almost takes a lot of learning and a lot of kind of effort to learn, and then you can enjoy it as a quick, punchy sort of mini war game almost. Perfect. So, Andy, do you think Senjutsu Battle for Japan should be left on the shelf of shame, or do you think it can come off of my board game shelf from time to time?
I didn't know you owned this game. So not only was it on your shelf of shame, it was buried. I didn't spot it. But I think it's one that needs to sit proudly on your games that we play on a regular basis. Mainly because I think it's quite... Once you learn the rules, it's just a quick, punchy game. And it's just one of those... Should we start a board game evening with a samurai fight? Yeah, fine. And we can whip that out. You can kick my butt and make me bleed again. I think it should sit quite proudly in your collection.
Cool. I agree. I'm going to get it out more and more from the shelf, because I feel I enjoyed it enough today to warrant playing it again. But almost the criticisms you and I have made today, at least from my perspective, I want to make clear that I'm not just trashing the game and having to go at it and being picky. I'm very much aware of the fact that a lot of that's probably on me / us.
It's us, definitely.
And I think I'd kind of like to take the time to learn it a bit better, get a bit more clear on the rules, and then hopefully have a better experience next time, which I think I probably will. And like you say, I mean, starting an evening off with a samurai death fight or whatever would be great. And actually, we forgot to mention at the start, we've played it 2-player, 1v1, but you can have 4v4, you can expand the board slightly, and actually you can do teams, which is quite cool. So we could do 2v2.
That's cool. I like the idea that you might be able to, slip around the side and attack somebody from the rear or something like that. That'd be quite cool.
Yeah, cool. So that's our first ever Shelf of Shame review, focusing on Senjutsu Battle for Japan. We'll be back fairly soon with some more of these, and we'll be looking at one of Andy's games next time. I don't think we've quite decided which one that is, but we've got a few ideas lined up.
Just a few.
Just
a few on the shelf, yeah.
We'll get the ladder out, get to the top of it, and start from there, I reckon.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, folks, thank you so much for joining us once again. My name's Josh.
My name's Andy.
And we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Before you leave, you must know you are beloved. Before you leave, remember